Hi there, I'm Dave Litton, and I'm your guide to all things in management. I have over 30 years of experience helping teams turn ideas into reality. I am a certified PRINCE2 practitioner, and I've spent decades refining strategies that make projects thrive. So in this podcast, I'll show you how to solve the common problem of users misinterpreting how to apply the management by exception principle, leading unfortunately to improper delegation or escalation of issues. Here you will learn how to clarify the principle, explain the 7 tolerances, time, cost, quality and so on, and provide a flowchart for escalating issues to the project board when tolerances are exceeded. Now, this is a topic that trips up even seasoned project managers. That is the management by exception principle in PRINCE2. Specifically, I'm tackling why it is so often misunderstood and how you can apply it correctly using the latest PRINCE2 7th edition framework. So grab yourself a coffee, get comfortable, and let's you and I clear up the confusion in around 10 minutes flat. Let's start off then with management by exception basics. Management by exception, normally called MBE for short. Now, in PRINCE2, MBE is one of the 7 core principles, and it's all about empowering teams while keeping control. Now, the idea is simple. Senior management sets boundaries, called tolerances, for a project's time, cost, quality, scope, benefits, sustainability and risk. So as long as the project stays within those boundaries, the project manager and the team can work without interference. But if something pushes the project outside of those limits, it's time to escalate it to the project board. And this, my friend, is where the misunderstanding creeps in. You see, some folks think management by exception means hands-off management, or just dumping decisions on the project board whenever things get tricky. Others swing too far the other way, micromanaging every detail and never escalating anything. Both such approaches miss the mark. So first, let's talk about tolerances. Now, in PRINCE2 7th edition, tolerances are like guardrails to your project. They define how much wiggle room you have before you need to raise a flag. There are 7 types of tolerances: time, cost, quality, scope, benefits, sustainability and risk. For example, let's say your project has a budget of £100,000 with a cost tolerance of plus or minus 10%. That means you can spend anywhere between £90,000 and £110,000 without needing to escalate. But go over £110,000 or spend less than £90,000, what does that mean? Well, that's an exception, and you need to notify the project board. Now, although counterintuitive, spending less than minimum allocated funds means that sum of money could have been used on other initiatives. Time tolerances work the same way. If your project is set to finish in 6 months, with a tolerance of plus or minus 2 weeks, you're fine as long as you stay within that window. Quality tolerances might define acceptable performance levels for a deliverable, like a website loading in under 3 seconds. Scope tolerances set boundaries on what changes are allowed without approval. When it comes to benefit tolerances, these focus on the expected outcomes, like revenue or customer satisfaction. And risk tolerances? Well, they define how much uncertainty the project can handle before it's a problem. Now, sustainability tolerances are documented in the project business case, and tolerances documented at the project, stage and team levels. These set the sustainability permissible deviations in the sustainability performance targets. Now, sustainability might be a new topic for you. So an example of a sustainability tolerance might be a new production line that must operate within 5% of an emissions target. The key in all of these cases is to set such tolerances at the start of each project stage. Now, the project board agrees these with the project manager during the directing the project process. This gives everyone clarity on when to act independently and when to escalate. Okay, I hear you say, so why do people get this wrong? Well, one big reason is misunderstanding delegation. Some project managers think management by exception means they can delegate everything and walk away. That's not it. You, the project manager, are still responsible for day-to-day management. And the project board only steps in when tolerances are breached. On the flip side, some managers hold on to every decision, afraid to escalate because they think it shows weakness or failure. Well, that defeats the purpose of the principle, which is to balance autonomy with oversight. Escalating swiftly should be seen as an example of excellent project management. Another common mistake is vague tolerances. If your tolerances are too loose, like a 50% cost overrun allowance, you're inviting chaos. Whereas too tight, like zero flexibility on time, and you find you're escalating every tiny issue, overwhelming the project board. So the PRINCE2 7th edition emphasizes setting realistic tolerances based on the project's context, complexity, and risk profile. So here's a practical example. Imagine you're managing a project to launch a new application. Your cost tolerance is £50,000 plus or minus 10%, and your deadline is 3 months with a 1-week time tolerance. Halfway through this stage, a key supplier raises their price, pushing your cost to £56,000, which is above your £55,000 limit. This, my friend, is an exception. Don't panic. Don't try to hide it. Just follow the escalation process. Like I say, escalating in a timely manner is seen as best practice. So, what is the PRINCE2 escalation process? Well, the PRINCE2 7th edition gives us a clear path for handling exceptions, and I'll describe it here step by step. Step 1 of the PRINCE2 escalation process: identify the issue in the first place. Something's gone off track. Maybe costs are too high, or a deliverable doesn't meet quality standards. So you, as the project manager, spot this through regular monitoring, like checking your highlight reports or risk registers. Bring us to step 2 of the PRINCE2 escalation process. Having identified the issue, now you need to assess the impact. So ask yourself, does this issue push us outside our tolerances? If it's within limits, then you can handle it yourself. If not, it's an exception. In our application example, the £56,000 cost is over the £55,000 tolerance, so it's an exception. So having assessed the impact, step 3 of the PRINCE2 escalation process is to create an exception report. This is a concise document that explains the issue, its impact, and your recommended options for the way ahead. For example, you might suggest cutting a non-essential feature to bring costs in line, or request extra budget from the project board. PRINCE2 7th edition stresses that this report should be clear and actionable, no fluff. Bringing us to step 4, escalate to the project board. You submit the exception report through the directing a project process. The project board reviews it and decides what to do. Maybe approve more funds, adjust the scope, or even pause the project. And step 5 of the PRINCE2 escalation process, on the decision. Once the project board responds, you update your plans and keep the project moving. The beauty of this process is it keeps everyone aligned without micromanaging. Perhaps it'd be helpful to see this in your mind's eye as a simple decision flowchart. So picture a simple decision tree vertically. Coming down from the top, you ask, is the issue within tolerances? If yes, your arrow goes to the next chart point, prepare exception report. From there, it flows to escalate to project board, and then implement the project board's decision. Keep this flowchart handy. It really is a lifesaver for staying on track. Now let's address a real-world challenge. What if your project board isn't engaged? Sometimes boards don't set clear tolerances or aren't available for escalations. One of the big killers in my experience. The PRINCE2 7th edition tackles this by emphasizing the directing a project process. When appointing members to project board roles, executive, senior user role, or senior supplier role, one criteria in choosing them is that they must be available. The project board must define tolerances up front and be ready to act when exceptions arise. As a project manager, you can help by proposing realistic tolerances during stage planning and keeping the board informed with regular highlight reports. If necessary, go and knock on their door if it's urgent and resolve the way ahead. My next message is communicate early and often. If you see tolerances getting tight, being used up quicker than you expected, like costs creeping close to the tolerance limit, don't wait for an exception. Raise an issue in your highlight report, or once more, walk down the corridor and bang on their door to give the board a heads up. This builds trust and avoids surprises. So, the way ahead. Management by exception is about empowerment, not abdication. It lets project managers run the show with clear boundaries, while giving the project board the big picture control they need. So there are 5 steps to get it right. 1. Set realistic tolerances for time, cost, quality, scope, benefits, sustainability and risk at the start of each stage. Step 2. Monitor your project closely using tools like highlight reports and the risk register. Escalate exceptions promptly with a clear exception report. Step 4. Use the PRINCE2 escalation process to keep decisions structured and efficient. And 5. Communicate proactively with your project board to avoid last-minute scrambles and panics. So by following these steps, you'll avoid the traps of micromanaging or over-delegating, and you'll keep your project on track. So finally, here's a swift scenario. Imagine you're managing a project to redesign the company website. Your time tolerance is plus or minus 1 week, but a key developer calls in sick, delaying the project by 10 days. What do? Pause and think, is this within tolerance? If not, what's your next step? But if you said, prepare an exception report and escalate to the project board, you're spot on and you've nailed the management by exception process. So thanks so much for joining me today on my podcast. Do check out my online project management courses at www.projex.com, where I break down PRINCE2 7th edition in practical, bite-sized lessons, all accredited by the PRINCE2 owner, PeopleCert. So until next time, keep managing your projects with your newfound confidence. Until then, from me, Dave, it's bye for now.